Hello, Smart Cities Expo. We're about to get started here with our next session as part of the Continuous Democracy series hosted by Civiciti. We're here, we have a very distinguished guest amongst us. He is a man of many hats. He is first and foremost a thinker. He has his Ph.D. in entrepreneurship as well. He's also an entrepreneur and a businessman, and this gentleman has co-founded a number of renewable and sustainable companies. And then this person is also an author and a writer. Most recently, he published his second book called Urban Entrepreneurship. If you haven't read it, it's an excellent book. And his first book is also pretty well known on this topic of climate capitalism. I am talking about Dr. Boyd Cohen, who is an international recognized expert on the sharing economy. And here we're going to be talking about sharing cities. Welcome, Boyd.
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
No, I think you press the button.
Can you hear me now? Now I think you can,
Okay.
yeah. Excellent.
We can hear you.
It has to be turned on. That would be smart, right?
Okay, so perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit what brings you to Smart Cities Expo in Barcelona this year, and what are the interesting topics that you've seen discussed at the conference?
So I've been in the smart city space for maybe 5 years now, and when I first got into smart cities, it was pretty obvious that there was a lot of lack of clarity around what a smart city actually is. So I decided to start researching what other cities around the world were doing when they were promoting smart city development, and based on that, I developed something called a smart city wheel. The wheel is a framework for understanding what a smart city is across 6 different dimensions. It's a very holistic approach to what a smart city is. And then based on demand, I generated a set of indicators so you could start to measure and benchmark smart cities around the world. So I did that for like 3 years straight. And then for a bunch of reasons, I kind of got bored with that project. And so I don't rank cities anymore, but I do travel around and work with cities on their smart city strategy. So I've been coming to the Expo for 5 or 6 years. The funny thing is I used to come as a visitor to Barcelona, and a year ago I moved to Barcelona, so it makes my life a lot easier.
That's great. Listen, they say there's no such thing as a silly question, so I will fire away. What exactly is a smart city?
That depends on who you ask, but if you ask me, I take a very holistic approach to what a smart city is. And for me, a smart city is a city that is innovative in everything it does. So technology can play a role, but too many people want to believe it's all about technology, and I don't. I think there's a lot of projects you can do in a city that actually have zero to do with technology. So for me, it's innovative in everything it does. It's innovative in how it engages with its citizens, which I know we're going to talk about. It's innovative in what it does to encourage and promote entrepreneurship ecosystems in its city. It's innovative in how it addresses sustainability and climate change problems. It's basically innovative in everything it does, including in procurement. So a smart city looks to constantly refresh itself and constantly innovate. And I think the important thing, and I did this very fun test experiment with a colleague of mine in design thinking the other day, yesterday at the Expo. We interviewed 30 technology experts, and we got them on video, and we asked them one question: what makes you happy living in your city? And we had this hypothesis that we would find that even though they're technology experts from some of the global tech players, that they wouldn't actually name technology as what makes them happy. And none of them did. We interviewed like 30 people. No one actually named technology. So I think the important thing about smart cities, and it goes to one of your earlier questions, is sort of how the smart city space is evolving over time, is that increasingly we're seeing this attention put on the citizen, not on the technology. So technology in service of citizens.
Excellent. And why this focus on the citizen, in your opinion, as opposed to the city?
I think it was a natural evolution. It had to happen because everything a city does is, in the end, about quality of life and improving conditions for the people that live or visit there. So I think we got distracted. I wrote this paper a while ago where I looked at sort of the evolution of the smart city space, and that we started off, I identified 3 generations of smart cities. Smart cities 1.0 was technology driven from tech companies. So Cisco, Siemens were promoting smart cities technologies as a solution to city challenges. And some pioneering cities said, well, let's try that. Let's try this new technology and see how it works. Smart Cities 2.0 is city-led, technology-enabled. That means cities said, you know what, we think the smart cities thing has some importance, but we can't let the private tech sector decide what we need. We need to create a vision for ourselves of what we need, and then we need to go out and get technology to help us achieve our outcomes. Smart Cities 3.0 is actually citizen co-creation. Technology I no longer put in the label of 3.0 because it's really orienting around the citizen as a not just engage. And this is, I think, we're in this transition period where we used to talk about engagement with citizens. I think now we're going to the next stage of citizen co-creation where citizens take initiative on their own to develop projects in their own neighborhoods or to develop civic entrepreneurial projects in their city that are going to actually be a business to solve a local urban problem. So we're going from the citizen as a recipient of information or maybe an engager of plans the city has created to actually having citizens say, this city is our city. It's not the ayuntamiento. It's not the organized city. It's actually the city is us. And we are going to take more initiative to make the city what we want it to be.
Excellent. So in this process of co-creation, what do you consider as being the main drivers for this demand to co-create things? Whilst it seems that maybe in the past there wasn't this demand for this type of experience.
In my book, I talk about 3 things that are changing innovation and entrepreneurship and making it very urban. So one is actually the urbanization as a trend by itself and all the ripple effects that urbanization causes. So we have, it's not just about population, but it's demand on energy, water, housing, urban food systems, jobs, all of these demands that are growing from citizens, and they're not always feeling like their demands are being met. So that's one problem that actually, if you're a civic entrepreneur, you see that as an opportunity. Entrepreneurs see problems as opportunities. So what we see with civic entrepreneurs is they see problems with transportation, and rather than complain to their friends and family, they say, well, there's got to be a solution. Let's build one and see if we can find a business model to make it work. And then we have things like bike sharing, car sharing, BlaBlaCar, Zipcar, Avantcar, all this stuff emerged really as a response to a flaw or an imperfect situation for transportation. So innovators living in cities experience the pain as a citizen, not so much as a customer of a company like we used to think about, but as a citizen, what are the pains I experience and how can I turn those pains into a business opportunity? So that's one factor that's driving this co-creation thing. Then you have collaboration. You have cities increasingly interested in collaborating with citizens for a lot of reasons. Cities are starting to realize they're incapable of innovating as fast as the masses can. This is why open innovation has been such a big topic for the last 15 years in private sector, is that companies started to realize that if we just close our innovation and we just have an R&D department, we are limited with our resources to how much we can innovate and how many people will be engaged in our innovation process. If we open our innovation process to all of our user groups, so when a city opens their innovation process to the private sector, to the citizens, what you find is a massive amount of innovation can happen a lot faster and in ways that are more frugal, that are more cost effective, or you can find new business models. So cities are starting to do that. You look at Paris just announced in the last few months, 5% of their annual budget now is going to be going to participatory budgeting. That means that, I don't know, it's somewhere around $1 billion. I can't remember the number. It's a very big number. They're going to be allocating to what the citizens decide they want to spend money on, not what the city thinks they should. So increasingly, cities are embracing these collaborative models. Also, we have the collaborative economy, and that's having a big impact on cities. So I have urbanization, collaboration, and then democratization. Democratization is the idea that the tools of innovation and entrepreneurship are becoming more accessible to more people. So I have a quote in my book from an investor in Silicon Valley who said that in the 1990s, to bring a tech product to market, you needed $2.5 million. In the early 2000s, that number dropped to 250,000 because we went to things like cloud computing. So you didn't have to buy all your servers. You didn't have to build all your software yourself because you could acquire software as a service and basically rent software you need. And then he said in the year 2015, he realizes we're going from $250,000 to $250 to start a tech company. Now that sounds crazy, and I write that in my book. You might not believe that it's actually 250, although I have examples of companies that have done that. So there's this great example in my book about a guy named Ryan Gepper who built this thing called Coolest Cooler and posted it on Kickstarter. Has anybody heard of Coolest Cooler? It's a beverage cooler that you can bring to the beach or whatever. But he said he wanted to make one that was a 21st century version. What did he do? He built one prototype, like in a fab lab, like we have here. So this goes to this collaborative model of democratization where we have access to resources in our city that make it really affordable to innovate. So this guy made a cooler, 21st century. It has an LED light when you open it if you're out at night. It has a blender on top to make mixed drinks. It has a plug in it for your iPhone. You can listen to your music with speakers. He pre-sold this on Kickstarter. So he put it up there, cost him a few $100s to build a prototype, posted it on Kickstarter, trying to raise $50,000 in pre-sales. So at this point, he has no employees, no investment in infrastructure, no investors with equity in his company. He owns 100% of this thing. He puts it up trying to raise $50,000. He gets $13 million in pre-sales. That means several thousand people love the idea so much, they said, I'll put $400 or $300 so I can get an early version of this product. So that's a good micro example how in the 21st century, with fab labs, with co-working spaces, with crowdfunding platforms, more average people can become innovators and entrepreneurs and solve problems in cities or build products like he did.
Wow, that's quite impressive. You're talking about crowdsourcing ideas, tapping into the collective intelligence of citizens, to the collective sense of entrepreneurship. Often it sounds like the wisdom of the crowds, but sometimes they're also the folly of the crowds. And what would you consider as being the main, let's say, obstacles or challenges that cities need to address in order to tap into this collective intelligence?
Good question. I think there's a lot of different tools. I think there's a lot of different ways, and I think this is important because cities, we talked in the morning in a plenary session about inclusive cities, and I think we have to recognize that even today we have people in our communities that are not even technology enabled. So if we want to engage citizens, we also have to make sure that we're getting the voice and input of everyone, not just the ones that are already tech savvy and are responding on an app to a question from the city. So you need to have multiple mechanisms for engaging with citizens offline and online. So that's one factor I think is important. You need to make sure you get to all the neighborhoods, so you're not just going to the ones that are the loudest, that are complaining the most, or always have the most ideas. I think you need to get to them, not just expect them to come to you. So you need to do that, be proactive in how you engage your citizens. Vancouver, I lived there for a while. Vancouver had this very cool project to develop the strategy for the next 10, 15 years of the city. It's called the Greenest City Action Plan. 30,000 citizens were engaged in offline and online formats to actually co-create a strategy for the future of the city. I think that's the future, is using online and offline tools to actively engage, but also build mechanisms like Boston has with the New Urban Mechanics, which allow proactive citizens to actually come to you with ideas and solutions. So you need to have mechanisms for that to happen so that these people with these ideas don't feel frustrated that they're presenting ideas and you're doing nothing with them, or you have no capacity to execute.
In your book, Boyd, you talk about in your book, Boyd, you talk a lot about the importance of democratization of some of these principles that you established. And you talk about the city of Vancouver, and here we are in Barcelona and Boston. But unfortunately, most cities are towns, and most towns don't necessarily have access, the resources, or even the scale that these larger cities have. So if you're a small city, how would you approach this notion of tapping into the intelligence of citizens, even if you're perhaps not the biggest city out there?
I didn't pay him to ask that question, but that's the second to last chapter in my book, is what can small cities do to address this emerging trend of innovation entrepreneurship and embrace it. And the reason I put that chapter in is because I get that question a lot, because I usually use examples myself when I speak around the world about the bigger cities, because they're the ones doing, in many cases, a lot of the more innovative things. There's a lot of stuff. We have the 22 Arroba here in Barcelona, 22 Innovation District. I believe that model can be adapted to different scale cities, and it has been. Chattanooga, Tennessee has an innovation district now. Cincinnati has one, and these are smaller cities of a couple 100,000. I'm not talking about 20,000 population. But even if you go down to, say, 20,000 population, I think embracing things like co-working, fab labs, these creative spaces that create energy in a city for younger people so they don't necessarily feel they need to move to a bigger city to get access to that. Of course, investing in and having access to good public transit connectivity, both inside the city but also to the larger cities. So I work in Vic a lot, in Catalunya, which is about, by train, an hour and 20 minutes, by car 40 minutes from here. And they have a problem because they're a little disconnected from Barcelona. So they don't. When I go there, I don't feel the entrepreneurial vibe, even though they have a good urban vibe. They have a lot of walkability, which is what the younger entrepreneurial, innovative generation wants. But they don't have a lot of the other things that they want. But in Sant Cugat, which is 25 minutes from here, and there's a good train, you have Creopolis, which is an innovation space that incubates and accelerates startups affiliated with a university, but also outside the university. So you can, if you have good public transit links, you're doing good with creating an urban feel, which I talk a lot about in my book, that nobody anymore wants to live in Silicon Valley. A lot of the tech companies in Silicon Valley have moved to San Francisco, which is causing other problems, as some of you know, like gentrification problems in San Francisco. But there's an opportunity for small cities, in my opinion, because big cities like San Francisco, like London, like New York are too expensive for a lot of young innovators. So if you can be a node outside of a big city, a smaller town that has good connectivity to a bigger city. So if you're interested in blockchain and there's no blockchain experts in your smaller town, but you can go 25 minutes on a train and get to a blockchain expert, then staying there could be beneficial because you can have more cost-effective housing. You could have, this is why I think smaller towns should invest in co-working spaces and fab labs, because these are affordable investments for the city that make it more accessible for young innovators to stay there and still be able to tap into the energy and the opportunities from the larger city.
Excellent. I'm going to, oh, this works. I'd like to, we're talking about sharing cities, and I think it's important that we also share the microphone. I'd like to open the floor up to the audience if anyone has any questions for Dr. Boyd Cohen. A question here from the audience?
Thank you for sharing. Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm studying a European Master in Tourism Management here in Girona. And I was wondering, this morning we had this conference saying that we have smart solutions but no smart citizens, which was one of the main problems because we develop a lot, but people are not aware how to use it. Did you share this opinion with the government, with the municipality, and explain them which kind of action they should develop in order to educate these people? Because it's true that we have a lot of, well, we are evolving a lot and we have a lot of technology solutions, but we don't know how to use it. And it looks like every day we are using more technology, but not in a responsible way. So what do you think about all this situation? Thank you for
I absolutely agree that you don't have a smart city if you don't have smart citizens. I do think we do have smarter citizens in the world, and all of us can be smarter in the future. I think I would define the problem even bigger than what you said. It's not just about whether or not citizens are capable of using the technology that cities are introducing. It's going to the point we just had. If you're going to go into citizen co-creation and embrace civic entrepreneurship, and you want citizens to be active participants in creating a better city, they need to be educated on what a better city could look like. They need to understand that. They need to have the tools and knowledge and understanding of urban issues, of design issues, of innovation issues. So I believe, and I wrote about this in my book, that cities, large and small, need to focus a lot more on, in the public schools, around things like design thinking. There's a group of educational tools that are referred to as STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And in my book, I write about there's an evolution of that concept now to STEAM, which is entrepreneurship, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So you're blending culture, entrepreneurship, innovation tools, and hard science tools, and you introduce that to children at a young age so they have the tools to actually be innovators in the future and participate in an innovation transformation of their city. So to me, it's not just about needing citizens that can use technology better. It's about educating citizens from a young age so that they can be active contributors to a better city in the future.
Any further questions from the audience?
You mentioned that most of the examples about smart cities or sharing cities are based on metropolitan. And then you jump into smaller cities, like big. But there's some countries that don't have the infrastructure about trains of infrastructure to get into another, from point A to point B, and you need a car in order to do this. And this happens in the US sometimes, and I'm from Texas. So where the trains don't exist, the public transportation is really bad. So you have to have a car in order to move. And that sometimes leads to talent attraction, like for them to go to bigger cities. And yet those cities where like 200,000 people, they're left alone without any human capital. So what's a recommendation, or what will be a possible solution for those instances?
This might sound surprising coming from me, maybe, but I think it's all about urbanism, because if you can make a smaller, medium-sized city more walkable. So right now, I'm from the U.S., so I know. I grew up in the U.S. I moved from the U.S. in 2001. And one of the reasons I purposefully chose to move to Barcelona is because walkability is a very big factor for me in terms of my happiness in my life. So, and walkability is majorly lacking in the U.S., in large cities and small, except for a handful, right? So I believe that one of the best strategies to retain young innovators is to create vibrant urban environments and engage the youth in making that happen. So, yeah, a town of 200,000 isn't easily in the U.S. going to be able to afford to build a high-speed train between, I don't know, Austin and Dallas or whatever you want to call it. But they can make livability more vibrant and interesting and engaging for people who are there, and they need to. And you can look at cities in North America. I lived in Vancouver for a long time. You can go neighborhood by neighborhood and start transforming. So it's not as scary to start and say, we got, like in 10 years, we got to make our city livable and walkable as much as Barcelona. That's probably not going to happen in a lot of these towns, right? But you can go neighborhood by neighborhood. Many cities in North America have done these very cool brownfield redevelopment sites on old waterfront or former industrial sites, and they redevelop those sites into walkable, vibrant, green, open spaces, things that attract young people. And then you do have to invest in things like this co-working and support those kinds of initiatives so that you have the resources available that will allow those young innovators to want to stay. But the thing there's so much research that's emerged in recent years, even in the U.S., we've witnessed a significant migration of people who lived in the suburb to moving to the center of cities, as cities in the U.S. are starting to become better urbanized and more walkable. So I think it's a transition, but any small, medium-sized city that wants to stay alive, in my opinion, in the 21st century, better find a way to become more walkable, or it won't be attractive to the young people. You look at the surveys of people right now in the millennial generation in the U.S., the data suggests that if they're given a choice to spend more money on a mobile data plan or a car, they choose the mobile data plan. Why is that? They don't care about car ownership anymore. In fact, many of them don't even care about owning or driving a car at all. Some of them will use car sharing. Some of them don't even have a license because it's not a priority anymore. Having good mobility access and having good data access is more important to many of them. So I think we have to change the priorities in these cities, focus way less on vehicles and way more on pedestrians and walkability.
Excellent. Boyd Cohen, thank you very much for participating, and we wish you all the best, and thank you for sharing some of the extracts from your book.
Happy to. Thank you.